Have you ever felt a betrayal so deep it rewrites your entire understanding of family? What if the person you loved most shattered your world, forcing you to question every sacrifice you ever made? This isn't just a story about a daughter's unforgivable choice, but a father's agonizing journey through grief, disillusionment, and, ultimately, a surprising path to a new kind of family. Get ready for a tale that will tug at your heartstrings and challenge your definition of loyalty. You won't believe how this twisted saga unfolds, especially when secrets from the past resurface, leading to a truly unexpected climax. I'm Eleanor Sterling, a woman of 72 years, and until recently, my life felt like a perfectly crafted tapestry of joy. My roots trace back to Harmony Creek, Nebraska, where my father, a simple farmer, harbored a lifelong dream for me that I would construct houses, not merely tend to the earth. He was right. I became a civil engineer, dedicating 4 decades to a company that sprawled shopping centers across the vast Midwest. The work was fulfilling, stable, a bedrock that allowed me to nurture my family and build a secure nest egg for my golden years. My husband, Jasper, was a name as unique and sturdy as the man himself. We met at the University of Nebraska, where he delved into economics, while I wrestled with structural formulas. Jasper possessed that rare ability to transform a mere house into a sanctuary, a place where warmth and laughter perpetually resided. He served as a quiet but diligent librarian at the local school, his passion for history boundless, always knowing precisely which historical text or biography would ignite a child's imagination. His kind, hazel eyes often crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and he had a habit of gently stroking his neatly trimmed beard when deep in thought. We shared 47 glorious years together. Our only child, a daughter named Beatrice, was the sole recipient of our boundless affection and soaring aspirations. Beatrice was a brilliant child, excelling in her studies, displaying a natural flair for the violin, and moving with effortless grace in her dance classes. Jasper devoted countless hours to ferrying her to every extracurricular activity imaginable, meticulously ensuring she had every opportunity. I, in turn, tutored her in advanced mathematics and intricate physics, believing we were equipping her with every tool necessary for a thriving life. After graduating from college, Beatrice relocated to Denver, securing a coveted position at a burgeoning marketing firm. She called us faithfully every week, her voice a comforting balm, and returned home for every major holiday. We swelled with pride at her burgeoning career, reveling in her animated tales of new projects and professional triumphs. At 32, she married Elias Vance, a man 8 years her senior, a real estate magnate with an undeniable aura of success. The wedding was an extravagant affair, a grand spectacle that consumed a substantial portion of our savings. Yet, our hearts swelled with joy, watching our daughter embark on this new chapter. However, the last 5 years of our lives had gradually, subtly, begun to shift. At first, it was barely perceptible. Beatrice's calls became less frequent, then she began fabricating excuses for missing Thanksgiving or Christmas. Elias was invariably present during her calls, and I could almost feel her carefully curating her words, as if someone was perpetually listening, scrutinizing her every utterance. Jasper, ever the worrier, tried to unearth the source of her increasing distance, but our daughter consistently assured him that everything was perfectly fine, merely a demanding work schedule. Then, the world tilted on its axis. Jasper was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. The diagnosis echoed like a death knell. The doctor gave him, at best, a year. We never concealed the truth from Beatrice. We informed her immediately. She came, tears streaming down her face, promising more frequent visits. Yet, those promises remained ethereal words. Over the agonizing 8 months of Jasper's illness, our daughter visited only twice, on his birthday, and when his condition precipitously worsened in early spring. I became his sole caregiver. I painstakingly learned to prepare his favorite historical dishes, though he consumed almost nothing. I read aloud to him from the history books he had cherished in his youth, his eyes occasionally flickering with a spark of recognition. We spent countless hours on the veranda, hands clasped, adrift in shared memories. Jasper never once voiced a complaint of pain, though I witnessed his silent agony. His primary concern was Beatrice's deepening estrangement. "We must have erred somewhere, Eleanor," he whispered during those interminable nights when pain held him captive. I had no answers. We had provided our daughter with an exemplary education, championed her every endeavor, never once curtailing her freedom. Where had we gone wrong? In his final weeks, Jasper's decline accelerated. I reluctantly hired a nurse, yet most of my waking hours were spent by his bedside. He became ethereal, transparent, as if on the verge of dissipating into thin air. Our conversations dwindled to almost nothing. He conserved his meager strength, and I, in turn, found myself at a loss for words, for everything vital had already been articulated in our 47 years together. Beatrice called once a week, inquiring about her father's condition, but her voice carried an undeniable formality, as if she were fulfilling an unpleasant obligation. When I mentioned Jasper's worsening state, she would respond with a clipped, "Hang in there, Mom," and abruptly terminate the call. I understood. She feared his death would derail her carefully constructed plans. The day before Jasper passed, the doctor gently informed me that the end was near. I called Beatrice, explaining the gravity of the situation. She claimed she would attempt to come, but Elias had a crucial client meeting and she couldn't possibly leave him. I didn't press the issue. It was painfully evident that my daughter's priorities had long since shifted away from us. Jasper drew his last breath at dawn on Saturday, April 23rd. My hand was intertwined with his as his spirit departed. There was no one else. My husband, who had spent his life surrounded by people, reading to children, aiding neighbors, had passed away alone, save for me. It was profoundly wrong, yet there was nothing to be done. After the doctor pronounced him gone, and the funeral home discreetly removed Jasper's body, I was left utterly alone in a house that suddenly felt cavernous and oppressively silent. The kitchen clock's rhythmic ticking echoed louder than usual. The refrigerator's hum resonated like a tractor. I sank into Jasper's armchair, the very one where he loved to lose himself in books during the evenings, and attempted to gather my scattered thoughts. So much lay ahead: organizing the funeral, notifying distant relatives, navigating the labyrinthine paperwork. But first, I had to call Beatrice. I dialed her number at 10 a.m. The ringing stretched into an agonizing eternity. I was on the verge of hanging up when my daughter finally answered, her voice thick with sleep. Evidently, I had roused her on a Saturday morning. "Hi, Mom," she mumbled, punctuated by a yawn. In the background, I distinctly heard Elias's muffled voice muttering something about coffee. "Beatrice," I began, my throat constricting, simple words suddenly monumental. "Your father passed away this morning, around 7. A pregnant silence ensued. I could hear my daughter's shallow breathing through the receiver, a distant closet door slamming somewhere. "Oh," she finally uttered. Not, "Oh my God," not, "How did that happen?" Just, "Oh," as if I had merely informed her that the grocery store was out of her favorite almond milk. "Beatrice?" I interjected, fearing the connection had severed. "Yeah, I'm here, Mom. It's sudden." Sudden? We had been discussing Jasper's impending death for 8 months. The doctors had warned us that time was fleeting. How could it possibly be sudden? "The funeral will be on Monday," I stated, my voice devoid of emotion, "at St. Mary's Church at 11 a.m. Can you make it?" Again, a pause. This time, I heard Elias's voice with crystalline clarity. "Honey, what's wrong?" Followed by my daughter's hushed whisper, "Mom's dead." "Mommy," Beatrice said, her voice carrying a familiar inflection, the one she had used as a child when seeking permission to skip homework or violin lessons. "You see, it's Elias's birthday on Monday. We've already made all the arrangements, invited friends over. I was wondering if we could move the funeral to Tuesday." I stared blankly at the opposite wall, where a cherished photograph of our family hung, Jasper, myself, and a tiny Beatrice, beaming on a California beach. Our daughter must have been around 10, her arms wrapped tightly around both our necks. That little girl would never choose a birthday celebration over her own father's funeral. You want to postpone your father's funeral because of your husband's birthday? I slowly enunciated, the words alien in my own mouth, disbelieving what I was hearing. Well, not because of, Beatrice stammered hastily. It would just be more convenient. We have the restaurant booked, the cake ordered, and besides, Dad won't find out, will he? The final words sounded defiant, as if my daughter were defending herself against an unjust accusation. True, I conceded, a chilling calm settling over me. Your father truly won't find out. But I will know. And you will know. And Elias will know. Mom, don't be so dramatic. It's only one day apart. Only one day apart. Between father and husband, between solemn duty and fleeting convenience, between the family that gave you life and the man who offered you material comfort. All right, I said, my voice flat. The funeral remains on Monday. If you can't make it, I understand. Don't be mad at me, Mom. I'll be sure to visit the grave later. Bring flowers. I disconnected the call before she could finish. My hands trembled, a cold knot tightening in my throat. Jasper had endured 8 months of agony, and his daughter couldn't sacrifice a single birthday celebration for his funeral. Couldn't cancel a restaurant reservation and a cake for one last farewell to the man who had cradled her, nurtured her, loved her unconditionally. I rose and began to wander through the quiet house. Jasper's reading glasses lay on the nightstand in the bedroom, and in the kitchen, his favorite coffee mug, inscribed with "Best Dad in the World," a gift from Beatrice last Father's Day. Now, that inscription felt like a cruel, mocking irony. The phone rang again. Beatrice, I thought, already composing an apology in my mind. But the screen displayed my brother Arthur's number, from Missouri. Eleanor, I am so sorry for your loss, he said, his voice laced with genuine sorrow. Jasper was an extraordinary man. Charlotte and I will be there for the funeral. I relayed the funeral details, outlined what needed to be done. Arthur immediately offered his assistance with the arrangements. I gratefully accepted. It was comforting to have people who understood the true meaning of family and obligation. After speaking with my brother, I called our neighbor, Mrs. Albright, a dear friend of Jasper's. She instantly offered to help with the wake, volunteering to bring food and set the table. Then, Pastor Jensen called, offering his heartfelt condolences and discussing the specifics of the service. People responded, offering unwavering support, all except the one who should have been there first and foremost. That evening, I sat on the porch swing where Jasper and I had spent his final months, gazing at the darkening sky, a profound realization dawning, how little I truly knew my own daughter. When had she transformed into this version of herself? When had she learned to prioritize with such chilling calculation? And why, oh why, had I not noticed? Perhaps Jasper and I had indeed made mistakes. Perhaps we had indulged Beatrice too much, failed to instill in her the importance of sacrificing her own desires for others. Or perhaps it was Elias who had systematically poisoned her mind with his cynical values. Either way, the woman who had brought Beatrice into the world and raised her would depart without a final goodbye from her own daughter. And that, unequivocally, was Beatrice's choice, her conscious decision. Now I had to grapple with that knowledge and determine my next course of action. Monday dawned gray and rain-soaked, a perfect reflection of my internal landscape. I awoke at 5 a.m., unable to remain in a bed that felt immense and desolate without Jasper beside me. I donned the black suit I had purchased for my nephew's wedding 5 years prior and fastened the tie Jasper had given me last Christmas. In the mirror, a spectral image materialized, an old woman with salt and pepper hair, profound wrinkles etched around her eyes. When had I become so aged? More people gathered at St. Mary's than I had anticipated. Neighbors came, former colleagues of Jasper's from the school library, women from his book club, couples with whom we had shared decades of friendship. Many had worked alongside him in a charity that provided textbooks to low-income families. As I surveyed their faces, a wave of emotion washed over me, a powerful realization that Jasper had profoundly touched so many lives. All of them had carved out time to bid him farewell on his final journey. My brother Arthur arrived with his wife, Charlotte, and their 2 grown sons, Benjamin and Michael. Our relationship with Arthur had always been somewhat distant. We lived in different states, seeing each other perhaps once a year. Yet, he was there for me, a steadfast pillar. He meticulously helped with the arrangements, handled the funeral home, compiled a list of people to inform. Charlotte, bless her heart, brought an abundance of food for the wake and orchestrated the kitchen with the practiced efficiency of a seasoned general all day long. Pastor Jensen delivered a beautiful service. He had known Jasper for years, had baptized Beatrice, and had even officiated our wedding in this very church 46 years ago. He spoke of the gentle soul Jasper had been, the boundless love he had bestowed upon those around him. He recounted tales of his work in the library, how he had read stories to sick children in the hospital, and patiently taught adults to navigate the perplexing world of computers. Listening to him, my heart swelled with immense pride for my husband, yet simultaneously, a sharp pang of anguish pierced me, knowing that our daughter was conspicuously absent from the side of his coffin. Several times during the service, my gaze instinctively drifted towards the main entrance, a flicker of desperate hope igniting within me to see Beatrice. Perhaps she had reconsidered, canceled Elias's birthday celebration, and rushed to say goodbye to her father. But the door remained stubbornly closed. Our only daughter did not attend her own father's funeral. After the service, we proceeded to the cemetery. The rain intensified, forcing us to huddle beneath umbrellas to shield ourselves from the relentless downpour. The coffin containing Jasper's earthly remains was slowly, reverently, lowered into the earth, nestled beside his parents' graves. I scattered a handful of soil, a profound thought taking root in my mind. In a few short years, I would lie beside him. Would Beatrice stand by my grave then? Or would she once again have more important things to do? The wake was held at our house. People ate, their voices low, sharing anecdotes about Jasper, exchanging cherished memories. Mrs. Albright fondly recalled how my husband had patiently taught her grandson to read when the boy struggled in school. A former colleague recounted how Jasper had orchestrated a massive collection of books for an orphanage. Each story unveiled a new facet of the man I had shared almost half a century with, and I realized, with a bittersweet ache, that I hadn't known everything about him. "Where's Beatrice?" one of the ladies from the book club inquired, her voice soft. I thought she was coming. She had business to attend to, I replied succinctly, my voice betraying no emotion. The woman, sensing the unspoken, wisely chose not to pursue the topic. By evening, the last of the guests had departed. Arthur and his family lingered, helping to put away the dishes and restore order to the house. Charlotte, diligently loading plates into the dishwasher, attempted several times to initiate a conversation about Beatrice, but I responded with monosyllabic answers. I simply had no desire to discuss my daughter, not even with my own brother. "You know, Eleanor," Arthur said, his voice gentle, when we were finally alone in the living room, "sometimes children disappoint. It doesn't mean we're bad parents." I looked at him. His sons, Benjamin and Michael, had both journeyed to their uncle's funeral, despite living far away and taking precious time off work. One of them had even brought his 2-year-old son, Noah, a child Jasper had barely known. What could Arthur possibly comprehend about my situation? "Beatrice didn't come to her father's funeral," I stated, the words flat. "She chose her husband's birthday." Arthur winced, a flicker of genuine shock crossing his face. "Really? I thought she had something serious going on." "She did. She's forgotten what family means." My brother remained silent, perhaps contemplating the futility of commentary. Some truths, after all, require no elaboration. After they left, the house, now solely mine, enveloped me in an unbearable silence. Jasper was gone. Beatrice, in her own way, had shown me she was gone too. I wandered through the rooms, switching lights on and off, meticulously checking the locks. Everything was precisely where it belonged, yet the house felt foreign, imbued with an eerie, unwelcome unfamiliarity. On the kitchen table lay a stack of condolence cards, messages from friends and acquaintances who had been unable to attend the funeral. People had penned heartfelt words about Jasper, recalling his kindness and boundless generosity. Reading these letters, a profound realization settled over me. My husband was loved by so many. It was a cruel pity that our own daughter was not among them. That night, sleep remained elusive. I lay in bed, attuned to the symphony of an empty house, a distant faucet dripping, floorboards creaking, the wind coaxing the tree branches outside my window into a macabre dance. My thoughts drifted to Jasper, to his final breath in my hand. Then, to Beatrice, who was, at that very moment, likely extinguishing candles on her husband's birthday cake. And gradually, a decision solidified within me, one that felt like the only logical course of action in this agonizing situation. 3 days after the funeral, I telephoned Jonathan Price, the lawyer who had handled Jasper's and my affairs for 2 decades. Jonathan was Beatrice's age, yet he carried an air of premature aging, his thinning hair and thick-rimmed glasses framing a perpetually serious expression. His father had once guided me through the intricate process of purchasing our first home. Jonathan himself had meticulously drafted our will 10 years prior. "Mrs. Sterling, my deepest condolences," he said, his voice hushed, as I entered his tastefully appointed office on Main Street. Mr. Sterling was a truly remarkable man. My mother often speaks of how your husband helped her locate a rare edition at the library. I thanked him, my voice clipped, and immediately plunged into the matter at hand. "Jonathan, I need to amend my will." He retrieved a file folder, adjusted his glasses, and regarded me with careful scrutiny. "Certainly. What precisely would you like to change?" "Everything," I stated, my voice unwavering. "Beatrice will no longer be my heir." Jonathan slowly set the papers aside, then removed his glasses. "Mrs. Sterling, I understand you are navigating an incredibly difficult period. Perhaps you should consider waiting a few months before making any drastic decisions." "My daughter did not attend her father's funeral," I repeated calmly, as if reciting a well-rehearsed mantra. "She chose her husband's birthday instead. I no longer consider her my family." Jonathan remained silent, evidently processing my words. He had known our family for a long time, remembered Beatrice as the spirited little girl who occasionally accompanied us to the office. "And to whom do you wish to bequeath your inheritance?" he finally asked, his voice low. I withdrew a piece of paper from my pocket, where I had meticulously jotted down the names of the organizations. "Half of the house and all the liquid assets to the Children's Literacy Foundation, the charity Jasper oversaw. A quarter to the Animal Compassion League, the shelter my husband always championed for stray cats. The remaining quarter to the Pancreatic Cancer Research Fund." Jonathan diligently took notes, occasionally raising his eyes to meet mine. "And personal items?" "Photographs, Mrs. Sterling's jewelry." I thought of Jasper's wedding band, now nestled in my jewelry box, of his beloved antique pocket watch that he had inherited from his own father, of the treasured family photographs of a smiling little Beatrice nestled between us. "Personal belongings, too, will go to charity. Let them sell it and dedicate the funds to a worthy cause." "Even pictures?" "Even pictures." Jonathan squirmed for a few agonizing minutes, then looked up. "Mrs. Sterling, I am legally obligated to inform you that your daughter could contest this will in court if she can demonstrate that you were not of sound mind or acted under duress." "I am perfectly sane," I interrupted him, my voice firm. "And no one has pressured me. I simply believe that a person who cannot bid farewell to her deceased father does not deserve his inheritance." We delved into the intricacies of the new will. Jonathan meticulously explained how to properly draft the documents to render them more resistant to challenge. He suggested bringing in independent witnesses and even undergoing a psychiatric evaluation to formally confirm my mental capacity. I agreed to everything. I wanted my judgment to be legally impeccable, beyond reproach. "When will Beatrice learn about the new will?" I inquired. "By law, heirs must be notified within 30 days of the testator's death," Jonathan replied. "But if you wish, I can dispatch a copy now." I shook my head, a faint, grim smile touching my lips. "No. Let her discover it after I'm gone. It will be a fitting surprise." Jonathan visibly winced at my tone, but said nothing. We agreed to reconvene in a week to sign the final will. Stepping out of the lawyer's office, a strange sense of liberation washed over me. It felt as if an oppressive weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I wasn't seeking revenge on Beatrice. I was simply drawing the logical, inevitable conclusion from her actions. A person who prioritizes her husband's birthday over her father's funeral profoundly misunderstands the very essence of family. Why would such a person deserve a family inheritance? Back at home, I sat at Jasper's desk and began to write a letter. Not to Beatrice. I harbored no desire to explain myself to her. I wrote to myself, an attempt to make sense of the turbulent emotions swirling within me. It did not flow easily. I had never been a writer, unlike Jasper, who sometimes composed eloquent historical essays. My dearest Jasper, I began, addressing my deceased husband, I changed my will today. Beatrice will no longer receive our house and our savings. I know you would be distraught. You always made excuses for our daughter. Always believed she would make things right. But she did not come to say goodbye to you. She chose cake in a restaurant over your funeral. I cannot forgive that. The writing was arduous, the words jumbled, my thoughts racing like a frantic torrent. I crumpled the sheets of paper, starting over repeatedly. But each attempt yielded the same raw anguish, the pain, the bitter disappointment, the crushing sense of betrayal. In the end, I consigned all the drafts to the fireplace, watching them curl and blacken into ash. Jasper was gone. He would not read my letters. And I was not going to explain my decisions to the living. The following day, Beatrice called. I saw her number illuminate the phone screen and simply did not answer. She called back an hour later, then 2 more times. Finally, she left a voicemail. Mom, it's me. I know you're angry, but please, let's talk. I truly couldn't make it to the funeral. We really did have important plans, but I think about Dad every single day. Call me back, please. Important plans. My husband's birthday is more important than saying a final goodbye to my father. I deleted the message without listening to its conclusion. A week later, I formally signed the new will in the presence of 2 witnesses, Mrs. Albright and Pastor Jensen. Jonathan meticulously reread the main points, ensuring I fully comprehended the profound consequences of my decision. The document had been drafted with meticulous precision, rendering it exceedingly difficult to challenge. Now, a copy of the will be securely stored in a safe deposit box, Jonathan explained. And the duplicate will remain in my own safe. I shook his hand, my grip firm, and stepped outside. It was a warm May day. Apple trees blossomed in riotous profusion, and children's laughter drifted from neighboring yards. Life, with an almost insolent indifference, continued, despite Jasper's death and Beatrice's betrayal. I had to learn to exist within this harsh new reality. The first few months without Jasper were the hardest, a relentless onslaught of grief. I would awaken each morning and, out of ingrained habit, reach for his side of the bed, only to find it empty, cold. I brewed 2 cups of coffee instead of 1, purchased his favorite historical biographies from the bookstore, his preferred plain yogurt from the grocery. My mind stubbornly refused to accept the profound absence of the man I had shared almost half a century with. The house felt disproportionately vast for a single occupant. It boasted 3 bedrooms, a sprawling kitchen, and a living room that once pulsed with the energy of visiting guests. Now, there were no guests. I cooked only for myself, and Beatrice's childhood bedroom, dormant for years, remained untouched, a silent monument to a bygone era. Sometimes, the thought of selling the house and relocating to a smaller apartment flickered through my mind. But then I remembered the terms of the new will. The house would still ultimately go to the Children's Literacy Foundation. The neighbors, bless their hearts, were incredibly kind. Mrs. Albright, a widow of 15 years, frequently brought homemade meals, comforting casseroles, nourishing soups, delectable pies. She understood, with a painful clarity, the profound solitude that enveloped one after a long marriage. Mr. Henderson from across the street diligently helped with minor repairs, and his wife, Dorothy, regularly extended invitations for Sunday family dinners. "Don't stay home alone, Eleanor," she would often implore. "Jasper wouldn't want you to retreat like a hermit." Dorothy was right. Jasper had always been gregarious, genuinely loved people. He would have urged me to go out, to meet new faces, to pursue activities that brought me joy, but doing so without him felt like navigating a dense fog. Beatrice continued to call every week. I consistently declined her calls, but I listened, with a morbid fascination, to her voice messages. At first, she offered profuse apologies, elaborating on the important plans that had precluded her attendance at the funeral. Then, her tone hardened, transitioning to anger, accusing me of deliberately avoiding her. In one particularly venomous message, she declared, "Mom, this is just silly. Dad died, but we're alive. We need to support each other, not sulk like children. I know you're upset, but let's just get together and talk this through." Support each other? Where was that support when Jasper was dying? Where was that support when I was burying my husband alone? Over the summer, I immersed myself in gardening. Jasper had always been the green thumb, meticulously tending to his roses, cultivating plump tomatoes and crisp cucumbers. I had never helped him, foolishly deeming gardening a man's occupation. Now, I was forced to learn on my own. I devoured gardening books, watched countless instructional videos on the internet, and sought advice from my patient neighbors. The physical labor of gardening proved surprisingly therapeutic. As I dug, watered, and weeded, my thoughts quieted, the incessant hum of grief momentarily silenced. The physical exhaustion provided a temporary reprieve from the aching sorrow. By the end of summer, Jasper's garden blossomed once more, though the flowers, to my discerning eye, never quite attained the vibrant perfection they had possessed under his loving care. In August, I tentatively joined the book club Jasper had frequented. The ladies welcomed me with genuine warmth, despite my status as the sole male in the group. We convened every 2 weeks, dissecting the books we had read, sipping tea, and nibbling on homemade cookies. The conversations were, for the most part, superficial, yet pleasantly diverting. The women exchanged news about their grandchildren, debated the merits of various films and television shows, and occasionally, with hushed reverence, reminisced about Jasper. "He always possessed such an astute sense of books," declared Estelle Davies, the club's eldest member. "He could articulate precisely why an author chose a particular ending, what message they intended to convey between the lines." I listened to these stories, each anecdote peeling back another layer, revealing new, unexpected facets of the man I had shared half my life with. It transpired that Jasper had written reviews for the local newspaper, offered his editing expertise to aspiring writers, and had even, at one point, attempted to pen a historical novel himself, though he never completed it. In the fall, Beatrice arrived unannounced. I was immersed in the garden, raking fallen leaves, when the unmistakable sound of a car in the driveway startled me. I turned, recognizing her familiar blue sedan. My daughter emerged from the vehicle, offered a tentative wave, and began walking towards the house. She looked remarkably well, slender, meticulously groomed, clad in an expensive coat and sleek leather boots. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, and faint, almost imperceptible lines had begun to etch themselves around her eyes. She was 37, yet still possessed a youthful vibrancy. "Hi, Mom," she said, stopping a few feet away, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Beatrice," I replied, leaning on the rake, my voice flat. "What brings you to our neck of the woods?" "I wanted to talk to you. You haven't been answering my calls. I don't see what we have to talk about." She winced, as if in physical pain. "Mom, I'm so incredibly sorry I didn't make it to Dad's funeral." "I truly am. But you can't just cut off communication because of that." "Yes, you can," I stated calmly, the words echoing with chilling finality. "Turns out, you absolutely can." We stood in the garden Jasper had loved so fiercely, gazing at each other like strangers. My daughter, whom I had patiently taught to ride a bicycle, to whom I had read countless bedtime stories, whom I had escorted to her first day of kindergarten, stood before me, offering a perfunctory apology for not attending her own father's funeral. And in that moment I knew, with an unshakable certainty, that I could not forgive her. "Why don't we go inside?" Beatrice suggested, her voice laced with a tremor. "It's getting cold out here." I nodded, turning and walking towards the house without waiting for her. In the hallway, she shed her coat, hanging it on the same hook where Jasper's jacket had once resided. The gesture was so familiar, so ingrained, as if she still lived here, as if nothing had changed. "Do you want coffee?" I asked, the question an automatic reflex. "Yes, please." I placed the kettle on the stove, retrieving 2 mugs. Beatrice entered the living room, her gaze sweeping around the familiar space. Much had changed since her last visit. I had put away some of the photographs, rearranged the furniture, removed the delicate ceramic figurines Jasper had collected from the mantelpiece. "The house looks different," my daughter observed when I brought the coffee. "A lot has changed since your father died." She pressed her lips together, a flicker of irritation in her eyes. "Mom, can we finally talk normally without these barbs?" I settled into my armchair, the same one where I had spent countless evenings with Jasper. "Talk." Beatrice placed her mug on the coffee table and turned to face me. I realized what I did was wrong. I should have canceled Elias's birthday party and come to the funeral, but you know how he is. He doesn't like it when plans change at the last minute. "I know," I agreed, my voice flat. "Elias doesn't like it when something doesn't adhere to his meticulously crafted script." "Don't say that. He's a good man. Just organized." Organized. A truly remarkable word to describe a man who would not permit his wife to bid farewell to her deceased father. "Tell me about that day," I requested, my voice dangerously calm. "About Elias's birthday." Beatrice looked momentarily confused. "What exactly?" "Everything. How the celebration went. Was he happy?" She paused, evidently attempting to decipher the hidden agenda behind my question. "We went to a restaurant with some friends, ordered a cake. Elias received his presents, a watch from me, a rare historical manuscript from George, a bottle of fine whiskey from Samuel. Just an ordinary birthday." "And were you happy?" "What do you mean? Just answer. Were you happy on the day your father was buried?" Beatrice averted her gaze, turning towards the window. Darkness was beginning to descend outside. The streetlights flickered to life. "I thought about Dad all day long. I was thinking about him. But you didn't come." "I didn't come," she repeated softly. "And I regret it." "Do you regret not coming, or do you regret that I'm angry with you?" The question, I realized, sounded harsher than I had intended. Beatrice turned back to me, and I saw tears glistening in her eyes. "I wish I had come," she said, her voice a raw whisper. "I truly do, Mom. If it were possible to reclaim that day, but you can't. You can't." "I know," she conceded. "But you can mend things between us. We're a family." Family. The word sounded peculiar, almost alien, issuing from her lips. When was the last time she had genuinely acted like family? When she hadn't called out of mere courtesy, but because she genuinely missed me. When had she visited simply to spend time with her parents, not because it was an obligation? "Family isn't just about blood," I stated, my voice unwavering. "It's about loyalty, mutual support, a willingness to sacrifice your own interests for your loved ones. You've demonstrated that you have other priorities. I have a husband, a life of my own." "That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But then, don't talk about family." Beatrice stood abruptly, beginning to pace the room, her movements agitated. "What do you want me to do, Mom?" "Divorce Elias, move in with you, dedicate the rest of my life to you. I want you to be honest with yourself and with me." "I am honest." "Then tell me, if I died tomorrow and Elias had an important client meeting the day after tomorrow, would you come to my funeral?" The question hung heavy in the air, thick with unspoken meaning. Beatrice halted mid-stride, her gaze fixed on me. I watched her, her mind visibly working, weighing the answer, and in that agonizing pause, I found the most damning characterization of our fractured relationship. A daughter could not, offhand, answer whether or not she would attend her own mother's funeral. "Of course I would come," she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction, a hollow echo. "Of course," I repeated, a profound sadness settling over me. "Like you came to your father's funeral." Beatrice spent another 2 hours in the house, a futile attempt to persuade me to reconsider the will. She cried, she pleaded, she promised to make amends. Then her tone shifted, becoming laced with thinly veiled threats, asserting she would initiate legal proceedings, prove my dementia, Challenge the documents. I listened in silence, nodding occasionally, a detached observer. Do you realize you're depriving me of my future? She shouted, her voice rising in pitch. Elias and I were counting on that money. We were planning to buy a bigger house, to have children. Planning to buy a house with my dead husband's money. To have children with grandpa's inheritance. To Beatrice, Jasper and I were not parents, but merely a convenient source of funding. What if I told Elias the truth? She suddenly blurted out. That you disinherited us? He might want a divorce. I looked at my daughter, a grown woman utterly terrified that her husband would abandon her for money. So what? Wouldn't that merely reveal the kind of man he truly is? He's good. Just practical. Practical. A truly insightful word to describe a man who married a woman for her future inheritance. Beatrice, I said, my voice heavy with weariness. Go home. Think about our conversation. I'm not leaving until you promise to change your will. Then you can stay for life. She rose, walked across the room, stopping at the fireplace where the cherished photograph stood. She picked up a picture of herself as a little girl, perched on Jasper's lap. Do you remember when Dad used to read me fairy tales? She asked quietly. Every night. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty. I remember. And how you taught me how to ride a bicycle, running beside me, holding the saddle tight? I remember. We were a happy family, weren't we? I looked at the picture in her hands. Jasper's face was alight with a gentle smile, his arm wrapped protectively around little Beatrice. Both of them looked serenely, unequivocally happy. We didn't know then that the bright-eyed girl would grow up and not attend her father's funeral. We were, I agreed, my voice tinged with melancholy. But you were a different person then. I'm the same. No, that girl would never have chosen a cake over a coffin. Beatrice replaced the picture, turning to face me. What would it take for you to forgive me? Finally, the right question. Not how to reclaim the inheritance, but how to earn forgiveness. Become the person you were, I answered. To remember what family means. But how? Tell me specifically. How do you explain the fundamentals of humanity to an adult? Divorce Elias, I finally said. Beatrice recoiled as if I had physically struck her. What? You heard me. Divorce the man who turned you into this. I can't. I love him. Or love the comfort he provides. She opened her mouth to object, but no words materialized. We both knew the answer. Elias didn't make you miss the funeral, I continued, my voice firm. You chose his birthday yourself, but he meticulously crafted a value system where money eclipsed people, and you willingly embraced that system. He's a good husband. A good husband would let his wife say goodbye to her dying father. Beatrice remained silent, absently rubbing her wedding ring, an expensive band adorned with a large diamond, a blatant symbol of Elias's financial prowess. If I get divorced, she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper, will you change the will? I don't know. We'll see what you become without him. And if you don't get divorced, then you'll be left with what you have, a husband who values you as an asset and no parental blessing. She hesitated. I could almost hear the intricate calculations churning in her mind, the financial cost of a divorce, the potential loss in property division, the precise amount she could still salvage from the inheritance. Even in this pivotal moment, her thoughts revolved around numbers, just as Elias had meticulously trained her. I need time to think, Beatrice finally stated. You have time. I'm not going to die in the next few days. She gathered her purse, donned her coat. At the threshold, she turned. Mom, what if I just visit more often? Call every day. Help around the house. It wouldn't help. It's not about visiting more often. What is it about? It's about who you are. And as long as you're Elias Vance's wife, you're not my daughter. She left without another word. I heard the car start, its engine fading into the night as she drove away, perhaps forever. The following day, I received a call from Elias. His voice, though strained, was impeccably polite. Mrs. Sterling, I need to speak with you. Go ahead. Beatrice told me about the will. I believe we can reach a compromise. Compromise? The word resonated like a predatory business proposition in his mouth. What kind of compromise? I inquired. You see, we're willing to adjust a few things. Beatrice will visit you more frequently. We can offer assistance with the house, with the garden, perhaps even relocate back to Nebraska if it would help restore family relations. Elias spoke with the measured cadence of a seasoned businessman offering a lucrative deal, visits to her mother in exchange for an inheritance, a move to another state for money. "And what are you personally willing to change, Mr. Vance?" I asked, my voice cutting through his polished facade. A stunned pause. "What do you mean?" "You wouldn't allow your wife to bid farewell to her dying father for your own birthday. What are you willing to do to rectify that?" "I didn't forbid Beatrice to go," he answered cautiously. "It was her decision, under your influence." "Mrs. Sterling, I understand you're upset, but let's be practical." Practical? He was suggesting I be practical about his wife missing her own mother's funeral. "The future has already been built," I stated, my voice unwavering. "Beatrice made her choice. I made mine. But we can talk things over. Find a solution that will suit everyone." I hung up. Elias called twice more, but I did not answer. There was no point in conversing with a man who viewed his wife's dead father as a mere bargaining chip. A week later, Beatrice reappeared. She looked haggard, gaunt, with dark circles etched beneath her eyes. She sat in the living room, silent for a long time, picking at her fingernails. "I spoke to the lawyer," she finally said, her voice thin. "He said that the will is competently drafted. It would be exceedingly difficult to contest. Jonathan is a good specialist. He also said you had a psychiatric evaluation, confirming your capacity." "Confirmed," Beatrice sighed, a ragged breath. "So, you really did think this through beforehand?" "This isn't an impulsive decision." "No, Mom." She started to speak, then fell silent. Then she tried again. "I've been thinking about what you said, about the divorce." I waited, offering no response. "If I divorce Elias, is that a guarantee you'll change the will?" "No," she looked at me, genuine surprise etched across her face. "No, divorce is only the first step. You have to figure out what you'll become without him. What if I become the right person, but you still won't change the will?" "Then at least you'll be the right person." Beatrice hesitated. I could almost visualize the complex calculations whirling in her mind. "So, I'm not supposed to change for the money, but for me? You're finally starting to understand." She stood, beginning to pace the room again. "It's hard. I've been living differently for 4 years now. I've grown accustomed to a certain standard of living, to people, to ways of thinking." "Used to putting money before people?" "Yeah," she agreed quietly, her voice barely audible. "I guess so." It was the first truly honest admission in a very long time. "Elias is very upset," Beatrice continued. "Says that if I don't resolve the inheritance issue, it will affect our marriage." "Is he threatening divorce?" "Not directly, but he's hinting." "And how do you feel when he says that?" Beatrice paused at the window, staring out at the garden where I was diligently trying to keep Jasper's flowers alive. "Fear," she admitted, her voice hollow. "Fear of being alone, no money, no status, no familiar life." "And love." "Love of what?" "Do you feel love for a husband who threatens to leave you for money?" A long, pregnant pause. "I don't. I think I've forgotten what love is." It was the most heartbreakingly honest thing Beatrice had uttered in all our conversations. "Jasper loved you," I said, my voice soft, "unconditionally, without demands, without conditions, even when you disappointed him." "I know. And I loved, up to a point." And now I looked at my daughter, a woman adrift in someone else's values, tentatively attempting to navigate her way home. "Now I'm waiting to see who you become," I said. "Whether my daughter will truly return or forever remain Elias Vance's wife." She hesitated. "I need time to think." "You have time. I'm not going to die in the next few days." She gathered her purse, donned her coat. At the threshold, she turned. "Mom, what if I just visit more often? Call every day? Help around the house?" "It wouldn't help." "It's not about visiting more often." "What is it about?" "It's about who you are. And as long as you're Elias Vance's wife, you're not my daughter." She left without saying goodbye. I heard the car start, its engine fading into the night as she drove off, perhaps forever. 6 months have elapsed since that pivotal conversation. It is now March. Outside my window, the snow is steadily melting, revealing the first delicate sprouts of the tulips Jasper had so lovingly planted in the garden. I sit at his desk, composing these lines, not for anyone else, but for myself, striving to comprehend the intricate turns our family's story has taken. Beatrice divorced Elias in December. The process was excruciatingly painful. He meticulously extracted half of their joint property, including the opulent house in the upscale neighborhood. My daughter was left with a modest apartment and a fraction of her savings. For a woman who had luxuriated in excess for 4 years, it was a profound shock. For the initial months following the divorce, she called me weekly, never once asking for money, never once mentioning the will. She simply recounted the details of her new life, securing a position at a small advertising agency, earning half the salary of her previous job, relocating to a more unassuming neighborhood, painstakingly learning to prepare home-cooked meals instead of dining out at expensive restaurants. "You know, Mom," she confessed in one conversation, her voice tinged with wonder, "I had forgotten what it was like to live simply. To meticulously count money when buying groceries, to choose clothes not by designer brand, but by sheer comfort." There was no self-pity in her voice, but rather a profound sense of rediscovery, as if she were seeing the world through entirely new eyes. In January, Beatrice came for Jasper's birthday. She carried a modest bouquet of tulips, his favorite flowers, and gently placed them on his snow-covered grave. We stood side by side in the silent cemetery, and my daughter, her voice soft and reverent, spoke to her deceased father about her life. "Forgive me," she whispered to the headstone. "I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you when you were dying. I'm so sorry I didn't come to say goodbye. I was a different person then, a bad person." I listened, a profound realization dawning. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, I was hearing genuine remorse from my daughter. A week after that visit to the cemetery, I called Jonathan Price. "I want to amend my will," I stated. "To return everything to your daughter," the lawyer clarified, a hint of surprise in his voice. "No. Split it in half. Half to Beatrice, half to the charities." Jonathan remained silent for a moment, processing my words. "So, she convinced you?" "No. She's changed." And it was true. The Beatrice who now visited was a profoundly different person. Not the selfish woman who had chosen her husband's birthday over her father's funeral, but also not the bright-eyed girl who had grown up in our home. Someone in between. A mature woman who had endured a devastating fall and was now, painstakingly, trying to pick herself back up. In February, she began volunteering with the very same children's literacy foundation to which I had originally bequeathed a portion of my inheritance. She read stories to sick children in the hospital and helped organize books at a library for low-income families. When I inquired about her motivations, she simply stated, "I want to do what Dad did," to understand how he felt. I did not inform my daughter about the change in her will. Let her build a new life, not with an inheritance in mind, but because it was the inherently right thing to do. This morning, Beatrice called with truly unexpected news. "Mommy, I'm seeing someone," she announced, her voice bubbling with a childlike excitement I hadn't heard in years. "His name is Daniel, and he works as a middle school history teacher." A teacher. A profession Elias Vance had vehemently scorned for its meager pay. "How long have you two been seeing each other?" "About 3 months. We met at the library, actually, when I was reading to the kids. He volunteers there, too. And he knows about our situation? About the divorce. Yes, he knows about the will, too." I told him the whole truth, both about Dad's funeral and about you disinheriting me. He said he understood you. Understands me. So, this Daniel was a man who valued family ties over mere monetary gain. "He's a good man, Mom," Beatrice continued, her voice radiating warmth. "Kind, honest, doesn't make a lot of money, but he truly loves his job. He reminds me of Dad when he was young." This last was the highest praise from a daughter who had once been ashamed of her modest upbringing. "Come on over," I said, a genuine smile spreading across my face. "We'll get acquainted." After the conversation, I sat in profound silence for a long time, contemplating the intricate vicissitudes of fate. A year ago, Beatrice had been married to a wealthy man, living a life of unbridled luxury, conspicuously absent from her father's funeral. Now, she was volunteering, dating a schoolteacher, and calling her mother every week with a genuine eagerness. Which version was the true one? Perhaps both. Perhaps multiple versions of oneself reside within every person, and circumstances, harsh as they may be, ultimately determine which one will prevail. Elias had certainly brought out Beatrice's worst qualities: greed, vanity, an almost chilling indifference to those closest to her. The subsequent loss of her husband and her privileged status had forced her to embark on a soul-searching journey, compelled her to excavate the better angels of her nature. I rose from the desk and walked to the garden. Spring was imminent, and new flowers would soon need to be planted. Jasper had established a cherished tradition of planting something fresh and new beside the enduring perennials each year. Life must be renewed, he used to say. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps families, too, need to renew themselves. To forgive past mistakes, to offer second chances, to maintain an unwavering belief in people's capacity for change. Jasper had always possessed an unwavering faith in the inherent goodness of humanity. Even in the final, agonizing days of his life, he had made excuses for Beatrice, held on to the fragile hope that she would ultimately find her way back. Working with children, he had witnessed a bullying boy transform into an exemplary student, and a shy girl blossom into a confident class leader. People evolve throughout their lives, he would often tell me. Only adults seem to forget that. I had forgotten, but Beatrice, through her own arduous journey, had reminded me. Now, standing in the garden amidst the barely budding sprouts, I made a final, decisive choice. When Beatrice arrived with her teacher, I would disclose the details of the new will, that she was, once again, my daughter and, therefore, entitled to a portion of the family inheritance, but not all of it. The other half would remain with the charitable foundations, a tangible reminder that money should serve people, not the other way around. It would be a lesson Beatrice would carry with her for the rest of her life, a powerful testament to the true cost of her choices. The sun was shining brighter, its warmth accelerating the snow's retreat. Spring was steadily unfolding in our quiet little town in Nebraska, bringing with it the potent promise of renewal. And I felt, for the first time in what seemed like an eternity, that our family had a future. Jasper would be pleased. His daughter had finally come home. It's been a year since I penned the story. I am now sitting on the same veranda where I spent Jasper's final months, gazing out at the garden, which has, once again, blossomed in riotous color. Beatrice visits every weekend, her hands deftly helping to tend to her father's beloved flowers. We work in a comfortable silence, each lost in our own thoughts, yet the silence is no longer burdensome. It is, surprisingly, healing. Daniel proved to be precisely as I had envisioned him from my daughter's heartfelt descriptions, a calm, deeply thoughtful man who perceives the world through the discerning eyes of a teacher, seeing the vast potential within people, not merely their present circumstances. When I recounted the entire saga of the will, he nodded with quiet understanding. Money reveals a person's character, he observed sagely. It doesn't create it, it simply illuminates what already lies within. They married in the fall, a modest ceremony in the very same church where Jasper and I had exchanged vows, where he had been laid to rest just a year prior. This time, everything was different. Simple wildflowers from our garden, a $100 dress instead of a $30,000 gown, a homemade cake instead of a towering confection from a celebrated pastry chef. Yet, Beatrice radiated a profound happiness that had been conspicuously absent at her first wedding. "You know, Mom," she confessed to me during the mother-daughter dance, a soft glow in her eyes. "Back then, I was marrying status and opportunity. Now, I'm marrying a person." They reside in a small, cozy house near the school where Daniel teaches. Beatrice now directs a children's reading program at the very same library where her father once worked, his legacy continuing through her. Their income is modest, but it is enough. I witness my daughter flourishing in this simple life, discovering genuine joy in the small, often overlooked moments she once deemed beneath her notice. 2 months ago, Beatrice delivered the most joyous news. She is expecting a baby. My first grandchild will arrive in the fall. They intend to name him Jasper Jr., in honor of the grandfather he will never meet, but whose profound love of books and children he will, I fervently hope, inherit. Elias, meanwhile, has reportedly remarried, choosing a much younger woman from an even wealthier family. Beatrice heard the news through mutual acquaintances, but it did not, to my immense relief, perturb her. "He's found what he was looking for," she said calmly, a serene smile on her lips. And in that moment, I understood. My daughter had, finally, truly healed from her past. Reflecting on this extraordinary journey, several profound truths have emerged. Firstly, family is not merely about blood. It is, fundamentally, about choice. Every single day, we consciously choose whether to embody the ideals of family or to remain merely individuals connected by biological kinship. Beatrice chose not to be my daughter for 4 agonizing years, and I, in turn, chose not to be her mother for a year. Both of us possess that inherent right. Secondly, money, with an almost brutal honesty, reveals a person's character. It does not corrupt or elevate, it simply illuminates what lies hidden within. The inheritance, then, was a profound test for Beatrice, and she unequivocally failed it. The subsequent loss of that inheritance was another, different test, and she, with remarkable resilience, passed it. Thirdly, it is never, ever too late to change, provided there is a sincere, undeniable desire for transformation. Beatrice was 37 when she made the courageous decision to become a different person. Many individuals her age already consider their character irrevocably formed. But she proved that this was not, in fact, the case. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, forgiveness is not a weakness, but an extraordinary strength. A year ago, I believed I was acting on principle by disinheriting my daughter. But in truth, I was merely concealing myself behind the impenetrable shield of pride. True integrity lies in offering people a second chance, especially when they genuinely deserve it. Jasper knew that better than I ever did. Throughout his life, he held an unwavering belief in the inherent capacity of people to evolve for the better. Working with children, he had witnessed a boisterous bully transform into an exemplary student, and a painfully shy girl blossom into a confident class leader. People grow throughout their lives, he would often remind me. Only adults seem to forget that. I had forgotten, but Beatrice, through her own arduous journey, had gently, yet powerfully reminded me. Now, sitting in the garden where Jasper's roses bloom, and our mischievous kitten, Sparky, a Christmas gift from Beatrice, playfully chases butterflies, I feel a profound sense of peace. Not the kind of peace that stems from a justly executed retribution, but the kind of peace that blossoms from a family healed, reconciled. A daughter has rediscovered her true self. A precious grandchild grows within her. The money Jasper and I painstakingly saved throughout our lives will contribute to the continuation of our family and to the betterment of those who truly need it. The circle has, indeed, closed perfectly. Sometimes in the evenings, as the sun dips below our neighbors' houses, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I imagine Jasper sitting beside me on the veranda. Not as a ghostly apparition, but as a vibrant memory of love that transcends death, of family that survives betrayal, and of hope that ultimately triumphs over despair. My husband was right. People are truly capable of change, and families, too, are capable of resurrection if there is the patience to wait and the profound wisdom to forgive. This story, against all odds, found its own beautiful, unexpected happy ending.